A very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to Monday's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Taiwan Jabela, your host. Let's have a look at some of the headlines in Tuesday's Namibian Sun. SWAPO defends food handouts at dump site, or dumping site rather. That is, over the weekend, the ruling party handed out food parcels to scavengers at Kupferberg dumping site, which has outraged some people who are saying the ruling party ought to do much better because they are the governing party, they are in charge of policy, and the interventions ought to be much, much bigger than handing out food parcels. Also, Chinese business owner counter sues naked employee. If you remember, a couple of months ago, there was a woman who was stripped naked allegedly by her employer at Chinatown, and she sued that owner or the employer, and now the owner is counter suing her, and I think there are also some media houses cited in that lawsuit. Also in Tuesday's Namibian Sun, Namibia's oil equity stake is fair according to local analysts. That is what Minister Toma Lwendo said also this past week, that the 10% shouldn't be looked at just that. There are more benefits that will accrue from that, and now that view is being backed by some local analysts. There are more stories in Tuesday's Namibian Sun than just those three. Tonight on the show, we are welcoming a man who has been on this platform a number of times, every time with a different subject issue, and that is Dimbulukeni Nauyoma. He's a social justice activist of the Affirmative Repositioning movement, and he is here to talk to us about that and a few other things. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show.
No, thank you, Teo.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me this evening.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
So last week you were in court for that long-running case where you were arrested while trying to help, or actually prevent, was it city police from destroying a shack in Kadutura some years ago. But what caught our attention is the fact that you seem to be taking that act under which you are charged to the High Court to challenge its fairness and everything, its constitutionality and everything. Tell us more about that.
Thank you very much, Toivo. I think for purposes of the benefit of the doubt, for those that may not have followed the story, on the 19th of January, 2019 or 2020, 2019 because it's now 3 years. I subsequently, around 4 o'clock, I also lost my aunt on that particular date. That's why I think I know it so well. So that day was a Friday, and we got a call from one of the residents of Tobias Anyeko in Okurangabat settlement, part of just closer to Stop and Shop. And we are alleged to have been stopping the police from doing their job, which is not true. I mean, we found the police have early morning that day removed the shack of the woman because of a man who wanted to sleep with this particular woman. And that is why we had to intervene and say, no, but we must look at these things fairly. Whether you have given me space in the area where you purportedly the owner, and we need to look at merits. And in fact, it doesn't have a title deed over that land. So all of them are seemingly allowed, to be there. But of course, as you know, that that part of the settlement is governed by what we call committees. And these committees are generally what the SWAPO structures has been, you know. Southwest Africa has reduced themselves into these minor committees at section level and somehow depict themselves to be the headmen of that particular area. So as you know, where we're coming from in the villages, the headman is the one that allocates. So that section leader then becomes some sort of committee, but under the Local Authorities Act, there's supposed to be a 20-house committee that must regulate the movement and also services in terms of the Local Authorities Act. So this Local Authorities Act, people don't see its importance. And because remember, the government of the day is Southwest Africa, therefore they've then brainwashed our people to say that committees are actually these people who are serving on a SWAPO structure. And these people are now the ones who now dictate and say, oh, Dimbulukeni is APP. No. He can't get here. Therefore, we must give another comrade who was there. So there is a whole lot of issues that had happened there. So we intervened to restore the dignity of this woman. And of course, when trial comes, we're going to present the evidence and narrate our story. So I just wanted to give the background. You know, we followed due process up to the point where the police came in. I can tell you when I was arrested at around about 4 or 5 o'clock that afternoon on a Friday, when they came, it was around 9 or 10 in the evening, and they came with about 6 to 8 charges. On Monday, when I appeared in court, I had 4 charges. To date, when I appeared last week, I had 2 charges. So these charges keep changing left, right, center. Of course, the prerogative of the state to prove their case and create a charge that ultimately suits their narrative. But the bone of contention why I'm charged is on AG 21, the Squatters Proclamation, AG 21 of 1985. Now, the Squatters Proclamation deals with a terrible, terrible word called squatter. You know, in a constitutional democracy, we can't even be speaking about squattering because it doesn't fit in a constitutional democracy. So it's unconstitutional for us to even speak about it in the first place. And our attack on this piece of legislation, which was brought into effect by Mr. Van Niekerk, the Director General at the time, we are addressing specific issues. And one, we are saying that it is unconstitutional, and pieces of it already have been declared unconstitutional in the Supreme Court. So we are saying that, number one, it is unconstitutional on the basis that it violates Article 8 of the Namibian Constitution, Article 10 of the Namibian Constitution, 15 and 16 of the Namibian Constitution. It goes further that we now speak about this dignity and human rights. It goes further because remember that these pieces of legislation from apartheid regime were put in place to place black people at the periphery of land and home ownership. Because it was illegal for a black person to have a standing structure. That is why in the negotiations of our constitution, you see that under Article 16, what government has technically done, it has expropriated the land that were not in the police zones. So, I mean, that was in the police zone. So, for example, the red line, north of the red line, all of you, land is expropriated without compensation. On this side, land is then protected under property rights. So, in other words, the proclamation even goes further and say, for Toivo to come to Windhoek, your employer, Namibian Sun, must go to the city of Windhoek, get authorization to say that I am now going to employ Toivo, and is guaranteed that Toivo has now permanent housing. So you can't enter those specific proclaimed towns without any authorization of guaranteed home ownership and guaranteed employment. So in other words, it goes just beyond this thing of housing, but it also regulates our movement in and out of these towns and cities at a time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting development there. Once you, what is your intention with that particular application? Because obviously, according to my little knowledge of law, you would you can't retrospectively be let off the hook even if you were to succeed with this one. Or I don't know, but is it to say now you want to win that case for future litigation, or is it for a specific case?
No. I mean, look, what is happening at the Katutura Magistrate, that's a stillborn. You know, that it's not even a case to stand. Government will never win. Because remember, if they find me guilty, one of the charges to say that I needed permission to enter, this permission that I'm talking about, to say that for you to enter Windhoek, there should be a written consent. So it means everybody in the informal settlement, all 100,000 of us who live in the informal settlement, are illegal to be where we are. So ultimately, that is the constitutionality that we are talking about, to say that there are no mechanisms. It's practically impossible. In a free and independent Namibia, 21 March 1990, we said freedom of movement, freedom of expression, all these things. Now, hell of a sudden, in 2019, we are saying, no, Dimbulukeni Nauyoma, forget freedom of association, freedom of movement. Therefore, now, you will need permission to enter the premises of the municipality of Windhoek. So therefore, already that thing is a non-starter. But what we need to do as social activists of our country is that we must be able to, beyond the mass demonstration and practical action that we do, there must be significant work that we do to shape and build our country. Because remember, a person that lives in Havana, Hakahana, Ombili, One Nation, Makaravan East, Makaravan West, all these people still sleep with one eye open, because even during winter now, at any given point, the politician can just start with these things of eviction. Of course, other colleagues have succeeded in repealing that part of the eviction part of the Squatters' Proclamation, to say that they would now require at least a court order. Now remember, if these people are in cahoots with one another, they get this court order to evict people. And it can be done. People can still be evicted on the basis of a court order. All we are saying now, let's do away with these evictions. Let's find modalities in the eviction process. Let's find modalities in people setting up homes. Let's find modalities in actually ensuring that we are dealing with the backlog. Windhoek sits with 130,000 housing backlog currently. The country as a whole, we sit with over 300,000. So how do we put a practical solution to housing? Because remember, for as long as these pieces of legislation are still not repealed, they can still be used, whether by you who's in government today or me when I enter government tomorrow. So it's about the moral. We can't leave these pieces of legislation on moral responsibility of the leadership of the day. So we need to make sure that we recorrect our country properly, and we set out the rules. So the end game for us is to say, let's do away with this draconian law. Because remember, it serves and continues the apartheid regime. It continues to perpetrate the advancement of white monopoly capital and the segregation of races, the segregation of our people, to forever ensure that our people continue to languish in poverty. So all we are saying is we want to deal with these pieces of legislation so that we are able to liberate our people, so that tomorrow a police officer doesn't just become funny and start arresting people for being in Zoo Park. Because under this proclamation, it can be done. So we are simply just saying, let's look at where we are coming from and where we are and how we got here. The reason why we got here is to say that we wanted to be free, we wanted to enjoy the fruits of independence, we wanted to appreciate and thank the freedom fighters for flag independence. But now that we got flag independence, these pieces of legislation, hell of a sudden, have not disappeared, because they can still be used any day and under that. And that is what I'm charged for anyways. So it's not really to say that we want to get rid of it because I'm charged of it. No, we needed to get rid of it because people must have access to housing and land. And these pieces of legislation that were put in by the apartheid regime was put in place to ensure that our people remain at the periphery and they are, in fact, the meal at the dinner table and not those that are eating and enjoying the food.
The last question before we go for the break, Dimbulukeni, is, I mean, how are you funding these applications?
Well, we have managed to look deep into the Mahangu fields that we have and convince really my supporting pillar was my grandmother and my parents to fund some of these cases that we take on. But of course there are good Samaritans who generally come and say, I hear you have this case and therefore would want you to support. In fact, we would also make a clarion call to those that want to fight these pieces of legislation, particularly our people that are in the informal settlement. Because we are the ones that are affected. They say who is under the fire feels the heat. Others, they sympathize and they contribute. So we are going to court on the 30th of June 2022 in the High Court. We've managed to secure an advocate who's going to lead the case alongside our fearless lawyer, Kadila Momo, to really look into the cracks of this matter and dealing with this draconian law once and for all so that our people can be liberated genuinely and not that people must now go to bed every winter time. And it's weird that, particularly in the city of Windhoek, that these things happen either under when it's raining or when it's winter. And you really don't understand what is happening, the colleagues at the city, because you can't really be, remorse. You have no remorse for anything, until at that point. So we will do a clarion call to those that want to assist us. They deposit directly into the account of our lawyer and not in my account. Of course, I will take the money, but I just want people to deliberately put the money in the account of our lawyer through our trust account, so that is they're able to do these things for us, and for also so that others can see where we need to take our country. Because remember, activism, Toivo, takes a lot from you, personally, physically, and psychologically. And you sometimes just sit there and you are asking yourself, and you see, must I really go through this? But because of the conviction and the love that you have for your people, you will always suffer. You must be the last to eat and allow our people to be the first to benefit. That is why we are saying that we feel that flag independence is important, but for as long as we have over 100,000 people that are in the informal settlements, particularly in the city of Windhoek, and they are sleeping with one eye open, we must be able to deal with this law once and for all to allow them to have total independence.
Indeed. We go for a quick break and return. We continue our conversation with Mr. Nauyoma here. Now the thorny issue. let me quickly see if I can find my phone. So last week I texted you because there are questions being asked around your. I think you were in Oshivarongo last week.
Yes.
With the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters, and people started asking questions as to whether you are still committed to the Affirmative Repositioning movement, of which you are a co-founder. And when I texted you last week to say, to ask you about that, you said, I remain an activist of social justice. You didn't answer my question.
Well, Toivo, there is you see, activism is not about affiliation. It's about a personal conviction. And say, if today we hear that there are people who are, ill-treating the masses of our people, and these people who are going to lead this confrontation or discourse or people who have already made this discourse are from the Popular Democratic Movement. My personal conviction would allow me to be there.
Yeah.
Not on the basis that it's partisan, because remember the problem why our country is not moving forward is because we want to see each other beyond. I mean, before I see you as a Namibian, I must first paint you what tribe you are. I must paint you what political party you represent. But in terms of ideological context, you see that the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters, for example, are leftist people. They advocate for leftist ideology, and that is why they fight for the working class and the poor masses of our people. And as a social justice activist, I sympathize with that. And I've taken a personal resolution to say that we must be able to consolidate the ground forces towards social, economic development. And therefore, if we don't consolidate the ground towards socialist power, then I can guarantee you the rest of what we are going to put out in the country is going to be capitalist. People who will not see the essence of humanity before capital. Because when people see another person, capitalists, when they see another person, they must see profit. They must see returns. They mustn't see the essence of what is happening. So what is the bone of contention at the Chitasamen, for example? Is that you have illegal immigrants who come on the pretext of invitation to attend a meeting. Now you ask yourself one fundamental question and say, what meeting takes place from February 2018 to this, what we are now in April 2022. 4 years. A Chinese has been living in Namibia, doing odd jobs that can be done by a Namibian, and already that Chitasamen has already issues of labor. Last week we are now informed that under the APS functionalities, this labor hire, and this is what bothers me. People claim to have gone to fought against Okaholo when they left this country. And they come back, they fund things such as APS in our constitutional democracy. So you can't fight against one system and you take the same system, you replicate it because you are now benefiting from this system and say it's okay. So these colleagues who are at Chitasamen used to have a basic salary of 4,000. Today they are told, no, we are scrapping the basic salary. We are now working on an hourly basis. So whether you come, if you don't come to work, so just know that that day you don't get anything. But what is the basics of this basic salary? And that basic salary is 4,000. And of this 4,000, they must still share 50-50 with APS. APS just probably because it's a friend to this white monopoly guy and the guy who's at HR, they gave each other tenders. And therefore, they now say, without lifting a finger, because remember, we have 1.2 million Namibians who are eligible to go and find work, but are unable to find that work. So therefore, the people are already there. So they just come and collect CVs, they take to their colleagues there. Then that facilitation process, the guy must get 50% of my salary. We don't share the same work hours. We don't share anything when I'm there. So it really disturbed me to a point where people really think that when we are dealing with issues of social justice, we are dealing with issues of humanity, you are reducing them to partisan. I've only carried one membership my whole life, which is from the Southwest Africa organization. And because the people left, that is why we are saying Southwest Africa, the people have left that organization. So therefore, I've left that organization on conviction that it cannot rehabilitate itself. It is corrupt to the core. The leadership embraces corruption. They have no remorse for people that they claim they fought for. I have lost an uncle in the People's Liberation Army during the liberation struggle. My mother have lost particular parts of a body. My father lost a leg. So it was a painful divorce from Southwest Africa. My grandmother was jailed, may soul rest in peace. So this, when people speak about Southwest Africa, I've gotten the induction when I was young, Pomafia, with my grandmother, to have understood what they've done to our current homestead, what we ought to have benefited, and how people must progress from there. So we get that narrative, and I divorce that on the principles that I have to say that, no, the rate where you guys are going and myself, I don't think we can associate ourselves together. So until then, I've not taken up any other membership.
Yeah.
We have, on the 9th of November, gone to Kleine Coupe to clear land and formed this beautiful organization called
2014.
In 2014 that we call the Affirmative Repositioning Movement.
Yes.
In simple layman's term, meaning that we are simply reaffirming our position to where it ought to have been. And we are taking a decisive ideological position to say that, yes, we may have confrontational aspects in dealing with it, but the basis of it is to provide superior logic over anything else.
Yeah.
And therefore work within the means and our confinements of our ideology to ensure that we liberate our people. In fact, we want to give knowledge and confidence of self in our young people particularly, because remember, 60% of our population is young.
Yes.
And 60% of this population is on Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, being keyboard revolutionaries. Yeah. So we needed to empower these young people and tell them, yes, you can do it. That is why you find them now rebelling in their employment. You see them in government advocating for proper and just policies.
Yes.
That is why they can now fight for themselves. So you come to a point and say, have I done enough to awaken this generation?
Yes.
And we are at that point where we are saying we have done enough to awaken this generation, but we must continue. And we must never forget or never relent, no compromise to fight for the rights of these people, because there will always be those that may not want to be at the forefront of it.
I hear you. And I think you have done a brilliant job. What you haven't done up to now is to reaffirm your association with the Affirmative Repositioning Movement. Are you still with the movement amid all these suspicions?
People are allowed to speculate.
Are you with the movement?
Indeed. I've never divorced. Like I said, do you divorce your clothes that you wear? Because remember, the ideologies of the Affirmative Repositioning Movement are in my blood veins, in my streams. When I go to bed, there is nothing that I see than awakening a generation. There's nothing that I see than being on the principles of social justice. There's nothing that I see than enforcing what I genuinely believe in. So I have, for example, been able to assist with a few colleagues, the Nudo Party, in rebranding and doing many other things. I've never seen questions around that. Of course, we assist many other people, PDM and others, you know. We've been able to have closed-door meetings with particular people of interest and deal with these particular aspects. And that has never brought my alliance to what I formed into jeopardy or into question. Maybe the elephant in the room is to say that since Michael Amushelolo, my business associate, joined the NEFF, does that mean that by association I'm with NEFF?
Yeah, but that is exactly where the suspicion is, Mr. Nauyoma, and that is that what we are hearing as outsiders is that obviously we have this housing project with Michael Amushelolo, and I am told that there's been some questions within AR around your association to that project. People saying, you know, the concept. In fact, people are saying that there are this land or plots that are being sold to people, while there are no. I suppose they said, you know, it's not registered land with the municipality, or there are no deeds or something to that effect. A dangerous, very fragile model in the eyes of your fellow activists, and that is when your status apparently in the movement started being questioned.
Yes.
And of course, we observe, maybe it's because we have these things that we are hearing in our minds. We observe you now, and you do not seem to be, you are still firebrand, but not under the umbrella of your movement. And that is why I'm asking this question.
Toivo, you see, I think last year already, I took a conscious decision to stay away from the limelight of the political movement. Why? You must be able to take stock of your work. I think last year already, it has been 6 years in active activism. This year marks 8 years. And we needed to groom young people to be able to take over and be at the helm, at the forefront of the affirmative repositioning movement. Remember when we started, we were agitating for the restoration of the dignity of our people as it relates to the land question. We've done so successfully under protest action. We've done so successfully. We fought for people who were evicted under the legal framework. We've been able to get to government to agree on the 200,000 plots. That's why we are in court today to enforce that decision that President Geingob took. We went into these committees to go around the country and make sure that we work with people to get this housing delivery up and running. We've delivered up to, I think, when we left, it's about 6,000 in Noshakati. Windhoek has always been problematic. I think 2,000 somewhere in Wolfish Bay. And when we left immediately that very same year, nothing has happened up to date under that committee. Because people, seemingly because we're the only ones with the interest, it looked like others were just there to collect SNTs and those things. So that is why it has taken a natural death up to date. So what I have then done is to say that let's observe what others are going to do with this movement that we have built for them. It's not a movement that resolves around Dimbulukeni Nauyoma. Because if I die tomorrow, does that mean that the movement dies? No, it shouldn't be. Because the work that we've put into this movement must be able to portray itself through those activists who are inspired by those leftist ideologies. Now, we took a conscious decision to enter the business sphere. We are speaking about genuine economic emancipation in our lifetime. How are we going to do that? It's not by being at the poster. It's not by being at the protest action. It's by genuinely joining the business sector in making sure that we use the leftist ideologies in a business concept to make sure that we are going to deal with those elements. People are welcome to do their own research. Because the narrative was, no, we got land from Job because Job was the mayor. No, we never bought this land from the city of Windhoek. Never. We bought this land from private individuals who own the land. Who owns the land in our country? White people. We bought this land from white people. So this land that we were selling and this concept that we are dealing with is a concept that must liberate our people. So we are at the forefront of creating employment. We are going to remove people from that 1.2 million. By the end of this year, we'll come back and tell you the value of the project. We're going to tell you how many people we have employed. We're going to tell you how many people we have created housing to. We're going to tell you how many activists that we have been able to empower and genuinely taste the fruits of independence. So these gimmicks around the land is what, all this. You see, when you listen to pedestrian views, it disrupts you from where you want to go. So when I'm not actively involved in the politics of the day, I observe and I give my contribution. It is because we must take a different stance on how we are going to liberate our people economically. Because we can't restore the dignity when we have councillors who are fighting in the city of Windhoek.
I hear you. Last question. In 2 or 3 words only, how would you assess your relationship with Dr. Job Mpanda, your fellow activist in AR movement? We
have no quarrels. The unity in what we have done and what we have started still remains and prevails. We have a healthy relationship. Of course, there will be confrontation. We are not in a love and hate relationship. There will be confrontation amongst ourselves and with general activists, because that is how we grow. Because Toivo, if we don't argue, we don't debate issues, we don't iron out our differences, we'll always be led by society speculation. So we, in as far as we are concerned, there is nothing that people can do to break us apart. In fact, they can't even pour water in between us. So we are really, really affirmed to our cause. Of course, it is our hope that the young people of our country will take this affirmative repositioning movement, like we've always said, and we maintain to say that this revolution must find its people, and the people would eventually take it upon themselves, never to relent, compromise, or equivocate, and ensure that our people are liberated totally. We are going to confront these issues at the business front, because remember, for far too long we were drawn into politics, and it is because of politics we find ourselves where we are. So we must marry the two to make sure that we are able to adequately deliver the services to our people.
Indeed. Dimbulukeni, thank you for making time for us today.
No, always available for commentary.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, that is Dimbulukeni Nauyoma. He's a social justice activist on the show tonight. Thank you for watching.